And if you can't distinguish between the character and the reality of who you are, you're in a heap of trouble. Telling yourself stories about who you are. And if you're not aware of what those stories are, you can't start to change them. And becoming aware is quite arduous. You don't even have to be fully aware, because that's a whole nother bag of chips. We can get into that if you want. But you don't even necessarily have to be aware to start slowly redirecting and slowly matching a frequency again to the new potential that you're stepping into. All of these potentials are coexisting anyhow. So it's really just what's the potential you're wanting to step into in any given moment.
Today's guest is Cortney McDermott. Cortney is a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, and human potential enthusiast with a Master of Science from the London School of Economics. Her work is in the field of self-development, and business strategies have been featured in Corporate, Women's Health, Success, The Huntington Post, Fox News, and many other mainstream businesses and lifestyle media. Courtney's career highlights include her time as an executive at Vanity Fair Corporation, vice president at Sustainability Partners Incorporated, and then running her own business with clients and audience at Universal Music Group, Google, Nike, and Virgin Unite. Courtney speaks 4 languages and lives between Italy and the US. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you, Anita. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely a pleasure. So, with all that I've just read out, what is one of the most courageous things that you have done?
Well, just recently, a few months ago, I moved from Italy to the US with my daughter. She had been asking for 2 years to come here, and I never thought I would move back to the US because I had been living in Italy permanently, actually, for the last 23 years, and France before that, and London, England before that. So I had been out of the States for a really long time, and it felt incredibly courageous to come back. And then it also felt really right for some reason when we made the decision. And then that snowballed into my daughter no longer wanting to be here. So whole new level of courage required to figure out what was next, and still living very much in that question mark. I think the biggest courage is the audacity to live in the question mark.
Wow, absolutely. So, you've traveled quite a bit. So, what is, dare I say, your favorite place to live so far?
I don't have a favorite physical
Mhm.
place outside of me. I think my favorite place is always more and more the places inside of me and the richness and the wealth that lives there. So in every way.
Absolutely. Brilliant. So, what took you on your journey of becoming an author, the work you've done? So, tell me more about that.
Right. So I knew, I guess I should go back to when I was really young. My teachers used to say, you're a teacher, you're a teacher, you're a natural born teacher. And I would always really struggle with that. To me,
Mhm.
that didn't make sense. I didn't consider myself a teacher. Even when I was much older and I became a professor, I was hired as a professor for Big Ten US universities and for the University of Iowa in particular. And I still railed against this idea that I was a teacher somehow. And then I started to, and I think because most of the time we see teaching as something very prescriptive and
Mm.
something like I know something and you can learn from me kind of approach. And I never really bought into that. I never bought into that. And then I started really playing. I love words. I love languages. I love etymology. I love why we use the words we use. I find it absolutely fascinating. Words hold frequency and vibration. And so for me, I started to play with that word teaching and the word educator. And the word educator comes from
Mm.
edure, the Latin, and it means to educe, which in our language is an archaic word. People might think I'm saying induce, but actually it's educe, and that means to draw forth. And what I kept coming into contact with, yeah, that's it, to draw forth the genius of others. Like I'm just standing in front of you, reminding you of what you are, right? Which is ultimately, if we get down to real deep stuff, I mean, it's self talking to self, trying to understand self. But
Mhm.
I when I found that portal to this idea of education and drawing forth, one of the main ways that I wanted to express that was through my stage work. And I love, love, love giving talks, and I give talks all around the world. It's my favorite part of what I do. And the writing felt like a way or a necessity in really supporting that. And it actually started when I was still in corporate. So my boss, I wanted to go to this conference. It's a long story. I was working as the head of corporate communications for a number of different brands in our portfolio, and I had no corporate communications training. So I asked my
Mhm.
boss to go to this conference being held by the Corporate Communications Institute of New York, and he basically told me no. And then I found out that if I submitted a research proposal and they liked it, they would let me build on the proposal, write a paper, and go to the conference virtually free of charge. So I thought, why not? So evenings and weekends, I was writing this paper, went to this conference, was really, truly very shocked that my paper won the best award because that was the farthest thing from my mind. And then I had to tell my
Wow.
boss that I did this. So I started there. Yeah, I had written for years before that. I had
Mhm.
written a lot in academia and all of that, but I hadn't written outside of that for a really long time. And so when I did that, yeah, like I said, had to tell my boss, and then it started to move more into the writing side of things. And then I slowly started to test my waters with writing for other publications, and then becoming a full blown entrepreneur and writing my own books and giving talks about those books. And so, yeah, that's the background of how I got into writing. But I think it was always in me, actually. So.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. Because, yeah, you're a TEDx speaker. Tell me more about your talk.
Well, that talk was a really long time ago. It was actually in
Mhm.
2017 when I put out my first book. And one of my friends and I used to joke. She's really a beautiful human. She has she's advised to Nelson Mandela, to Barack Obama. I mean, she has personal recommendations from these people. And we had met on the stage in Oxford. She and I were presenting at Said's the business school for Oxford years and years ago. And after I gave that talk, she called me up and she said, let's have the talk about the talk, because TEDx is extremely rigorous. And at that time, the funny thing was, it was like I was trying to shoot through boundaries of my own. I was trying to really step into new potentials for myself. And I hadn't fully stepped into those new potentials. So when I gave
Mhm.
that talk, it was from a place of, I see this is in my vision. And I'm almost talking about something that's in my vision that I haven't fully known in my cells yet. And so that talk was an interesting one because I had given many talks before that, but that was the one I think where I was very much still in paradigms and structure. So it's interesting to look back on that version of me and all the different versions of me and say, oh, wow, you can really see the evolution. So yeah, that's that talk. It's still lovely. I still love the woman who did that in me, but yeah, there's been a lot of evolution since then.
Oh, wow. I can imagine. Yeah, definitely. Tell me about your work and what that involves.
My work is varied, and my work
Mhm.
is really what's in front of me right now. So it's not for me that I have to follow some prescribed idea of what any title means or
Mhm.
any of that. I
Mhm.
truly now wake up every day and say, okay, what's in front of me now? What
Mhm.
joyous things do I get to pull from my calendar? And I just do that to the best of my ability. And when I've done that to the best of my ability, I I've done what I need to do and what only I can do.
Mhm.
So I would say that's what my work looks like. And as I said, it's completely varied. So some days I might be speaking on stages in front of thousands of people, and some days I might be doing a book signing, and some days I might be on a podcast with you, and just really enjoying all of it as if it were really the same thing, because it is.
I suppose it's just being.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. 100%.
Absolutely being.
Yeah.
So tell me about your book. Give yourself permission. Be confident, be free, and be you. I
Hmm.
love the title. And how did you come up with that title? Or is that the passion that was in there that naturally came out?
Yeah, that book the title and the chapters came as a kind of download.
Hmm.
And I think the reason they came through me is because I had seen so many people at the upper echelons of business and life who weren't fully giving themselves permission to be
Mm.
themselves. And it's funny because we get that, there's that maxim, just be yourself and all of this, and we all hear it and we say it. But what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
And being yourself, the magnitude of being what you are, which is really all of it, it's so wild to allow yourself that. And especially as you grow in business, and especially if you're someone who's in the public eye. I work with a lot of people who are in the public eye, and everyone expects a certain thing of them. And so everything inside of them and outside of them is reinforcing a character that they're playing. And if you can't distinguish between the character and the reality of who you are, you're in a heap of trouble. So, it's funny. I often, again, from etymology, I'll often talk about the word person, which comes from persona, which were the masks they wore in ancient Greek theater. So when we say I'm this kind of person, I'm that kind of person, what you're really saying is, this is the mask I'm wearing right now. And I want to be sure that you know what mask I'm wearing so that we're all on the same page. And the way that is informing, again, on a cellular level, that's informing your genetic expression. That's informing what's available to you right now. And I talk about this in the second book because people could never understand why such massive changes were occurring in my physical. People will see me from moment to moment or year to year, and there's something like, what, you don't look anything the same, right? I sometimes in my talks show a picture of myself from 10 years ago when I was in corporate, and most of the audience doesn't even recognize me.
Wow.
They do not recognize me as the same human. And so that's testament, but also, working with clients. I've had clients, I had one client who had terrible eczema, tried in every way, had all the resources, all the financial resources you could possibly imagine at her disposal, and started working together. And after the first week, it was gone, never came back again.
Wow.
You are telling yourself stories about who you are. And if you're not aware of what those stories are, you can't start to change them. And becoming aware is quite arduous. You don't even have to be fully aware, because that's a whole nother bag of chips. We can get into that if you want, but you don't even necessarily have to be aware to start slowly redirecting and slowly matching a frequency again to the new potential that you're stepping into. All of these potentials are coexisting anyhow. So it's really just, what's the potential you're wanting to step into in any given moment.
So tell me more about the frequency and how that can help us. How can we help ourselves really understand or start to understand what our energy levels are?
Well, we could take that conversation in so many different ways. I mean, Tesla talked about, if you really want to understand the nature of the universe, and I think Einstein also said this, and again, I'm paraphrasing, but it's study frequencies and vibrations. It's all frequencies and vibrations. If you go down to the lowest, what we can see, the lowest number that we're able to see, it's not subatomic quanta, it's not quarks and bosons, it's waves. It's waves of energy. If you look at that computer that you're sitting in front of, or I look at this computer, I could see it as something solid, but it's not. The particles inside that computer are speeding around at the speed of express trains. So what are we dealing with? What are we really dealing with? And I think, again, the question is a big one, but frequencies and vibrations, when we talk about them, again, we could go in so many different directions. One of the ones that I like to start helping people to see, or rather, again, evoke in themselves, is brainwave frequencies, right? So most people are running around in beta most of the time. And beta has different range of hertz or cycles per second. And the low range beta is pretty fairly chill, but you're still in beta. And then high range beta is you're freaking out about everything. A lot of people that you see going around are freaking out about everything, right? The sky is falling. And so if you just start to understand, oh, I'm in those frequencies, and you start to understand another beautiful phenomena that occurs at least twice a day, which is when you are falling asleep and when you're waking up. Okay. And that is when you are moving into other brainwave frequencies. There are more than these ones that I'll talk about here, but you're moving from beta into alpha, into theta, into delta. You can start training yourself to do this eyes wide open. So you're going to move from beta into alpha just by laying down for a few minutes. And people say, oh, I can't lay down. Oh, I can't take a break. And what I say, if you're telling me that, is, to paraphrase from the Dalai Lama, if you can't take 5 minutes for meditation, take an hour. If
Yeah.
you really truly believe that you can't lay down for 5 minutes, you need an hour. Your nervous system needs to go into relaxation, into parasympathetic response.
Mm.
So I often suggest lay down, go yawn. Literally. Yawning is one of the best meditations you could do. People go on all this fancy breath work, just yawn for 30 seconds, and you're going to start to release massive amounts of oxytocin and serotonin and all sorts of things into your bloodstream that are going to make you feel a
Wow.
heck of a lot better. If you do it with other people, you're going to get a bonding experience. So
Mm.
your frequency, you can work on the level of your brainwave frequencies, but also starting to understand that your thought is a frequency. Your thoughts are electrical impulses. We say I think. I find it very curious that most people say that they think, because people don't say I beat my heart. Most people are
Mhm.
not
Mm.
consciously directing the process of thought.
Mm.
So when you say I think, if you're not consciously directing that, you're actually just receiving a thought impulse and you're deciding on some level whether you're going to attach to that or not. And people like to attach to all sorts of thought impulses, especially the ones that slap you across the face. Like, oh, he's such a
Sure.
jerk and I don't want to go here and blah, blah, blah. And I just repeat and repeat. And you can see when they're walking around, they're kind of grumbly. I don't see very many people like that anymore because, again, just doesn't match my frequency. I don't even see it. But you can see that. And the important thing to remember is this is a frequency, and there are ways to train yourself
Mm.
into other frequencies. And I do cover that really simply in this second book, because what I don't like is, you get all of this information. Like for example, we say I think, but as I said, a thought is an electrical impulse. We don't know is an electrical impulse. We don't know the part of the brain, for example, that's responsible for thought. I can't point to your prefrontal cortex and say thought originates there. We don't know.
Mhm. Mm.
So you don't even need to know all of that. What you need to know,
Yeah.
and what you can know is that there are very simple ways to start redirecting, but especially redirecting just your energy flow. A lot of people think it's their brain, it's psychology and all of this, but really there's a lot of stuck stagnant energy in your body, and you can free up and change those frequencies by just moving. Some people say, "Oh, I just went for a walk around the block and all of a sudden I'm feeling so much better." Oh, right. You
Mm.
started to release neuropeptides for some of the organs in your body, and you started to just relax your frequency, and now all of a sudden you've got some more answers and some more availability and creativity. It's really, really simple stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like changing your change your results for anything.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like,
So
if something isn't going great in a relationship or something, time out. Time yourself out.
Mhm.
You shouldn't be giving the
Mm.
worst of you to the best people in your life. What are we doing? Time yourself out. Get into a frequency that feels good. You can do this, again, dancing around the living room, or going for a walk, or petting your dog, or
Mm.
picking a flower and really looking at it for a few minutes. You can just chill.
Because some people can say, being in the moment, really being present. And I like your take on it with the frequencies. I love that.
Well, you really have no choice about being in
Mm.
the moment. You are in the
Mm.
moment.
Mhm. Mm. It's
You
how you
are.
choose to be in it.
Yeah, you are
Mm.
in the moment.
Mm.
I think this is why
Mm.
this conversation can get so goofy sometimes, is because it's like, oh,
Mm.
be present. Well, you have no choice but to be present. There's only this
Mhm.
moment. It's
Mhm.
not. It's not. It's like the whole space time collapsing thing is real. So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
This change starts within you. Tell me more about that.
Well, so that's my first book. That's the first book that came out.
Sorry.
The second book
Mm.
is Give Yourself Permission, and that one came
All
out this
right.
past summer. Change Starts Within You was inspired by my own path of getting to this place that everyone says they want to be at, which was sort of this pinnacle of success in virtually every way. I mean, I had all the titles in academia. I had the titles in corporate. I was jet setting around. I had a husband. I was a marathon runner, a daughter. You name it. I kind of was doing it, and every single every single one of those quote unquote milestones turned into something that didn't feel fully gratified. It was like I was chasing after something that I had all along, and I didn't realize I had it. It's like Dorothy with the ruby slippers. I just didn't
Yeah.
realize. And so I really had to get really real with myself. And I joke, that book and the TEDx starts with my sitting on the corporate jet, sipping the espresso on my way to Brussels, only person on the jet, feeling miserably successful. you know? And so that book was for also in the hopes of shortening the learning curve. Whatever
Mm,
you are seeking and whatever you're running away from, and this is to paraphrase from Anthony DeMello, but it's inside of you.
mm,
Everything you're seeking and
mhm,
everything you're running away from is inside of you. And when you start to
absolutely.
really get that, you start to really get with it, and then life starts to
Mm,
really change.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
that's where change starts within you, which I was really shocked that title hadn't been taken. And then the subtitle to Unlock the Confidence to Lead with Intuition was also really important to me because when I talk about confidence, which is in the subtitle of both books, I'm not talking about, being the smartest and whatever most boastful person in the room. Confidence comes from confidere, which means with trust or with reliance. It's learning how to
Mm,
trust in yourself, in life, in others, in what's happening right now. And that is a huge key to waking up.
definitely. And so, why is relaxing is the most powerful technique then to achieve what you want?
Yeah, I love this one.
Mm,
Oh, well, the minute you start to relax is the minute you start to change your brainwave frequencies.
mhm,
And the minute you start to change your brainwave frequencies is the minute you start becoming more receptive to that which you're seeking. You can't be receptive to something if you're all tight and you're shaking and you're
yeah.
running around and you got your panties in a bundle. You can't be really receptive to what life has to offer you. And
Mm,
relaxing, lots of people, again, they go in with all these intricate strategies and all these 5-point plans. And I'm very wary of stuff like that. If someone tells me they got the 5 ways to do something for me, I'm like, that's a huge red flag for me. It's
mhm,
like this morning I thought about this. I was walking in the woods, I was hiking, and I thought, what if someone were to come up to you in the middle of the woods and ask you, do you know where my car is? A complete stranger. Do you know where my car
mhm,
is? I mean, you look at them and be like, dude, I don't even know you. What are you talking about? Right. But here's the thing. A lot of people are doing that. They walk up
mhm,
to other people and they say, do you know where my car is? And by car, I'm talking about your heart. Do you
mhm,
know where my guidance, my inner knowing, do you know where it is? Can you find
mhm,
it for me? No, no one can find it for you. Now, if you have someone that you walk up to in the forest and you say, you know where my car is, that person may say, huh, I don't know where your car is, but I know where my car is. And I know these paths pretty well. And I know where some parking lots are around here. And maybe if I talk to you about that a little bit, it'll kind of jog your memory about maybe where you left your car. Maybe, maybe, just
mhm,
maybe. That's what a teacher does is they stand in front of you and they say, oh, well, I found my car. I know where my car is. I know where my heart is. I know where my sense of intuition lives. I get with that all the time. I know where it is. I've been on
mhm.
these paths for a while. I've, worked with it.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about here. I don't have anyone's answers. It's funny. Like sometimes people call me, they're like, oh, can you resolve this? Whatever. I'm like, and it doesn't matter who they are. And I get some pretty amazing calls. And I always say, look, I don't have your answers, but the good thing is you do. And we're going to
Mm,
learn how to source them. You learn how to source your own answers. Yeah.
love that. Love
Hmm.
that. I mean, one thing I personally want to know is the myth of balance. A lot of people talk about you can have balance, you can't have balance, there's no such thing. So unpack that. I'd love to know personally myself for me.
Yeah, years ago, I was writing for the Huffington Post and I talked about this balance myth because I was like, well, we say this thing like you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I'm like, oh,
Mm,
why would I make a cake that I can't eat? Like, why would I have a cake that I can't eat? The thing is, you can have your cake and you can eat your cake and then you can make another cake. You just can't do it all at the same time without getting really overwhelmed. And
mm,
one of the things I like to know is, when I'm working with someone or myself is like, what's the main vision here? What do I hold? What's the feeling vibration of what's important to be expressed through this form? That I feel the formless
mm,
is wishing to express through this form. And then how does the form start to interact with that? It's all the same kind of cake. It's a very intricate cake. Like I said, sometimes maybe I'm on stage, sometimes I'm writing books, sometimes I'm talking to you,
mhm,
whatever that looks like. But it's really starting to tune into what's the driving force, what's the motivating force, and really allowing seasons for different things. You don't need to do it all at the same time. Balance,
mhm,
let me put it this way, balance would be like, oh, there was something so beautiful that came through for this just the other week. Well, that particular example isn't coming through, but it would be like if I told you, okay, if I told you to paint a picture, right? And I say
Mhm.
use the same amount of color for each color. I want you to use like 20 different colors and use the same amount of color for each color. You're not going to get, I mean, I can't imagine. Maybe some very wildly creative artists will be able to do this,
Mhm.
but most of us are going to struggle trying to
Mhm.
make that
Mhm.
into a masterpiece, okay? Or even something that anyone wants to look at. It'd be like playing the 88 keys of the piano all at the same time. You don't play them all at the same time. They are meant to be in harmony. Harmony is one thing, balance is a myth. In nature, balance doesn't exist. The minute something comes into a state of quote unquote balance, it's knocked out of balance by nature because it's required for growth. Asymmetry is required. That's why I love Picasso's work, because it was also asymmetrical. We are also
Mhm.
asymmetrical, and yet people don't want it to be
Mhm.
like that. They want it to be this, perfectly whatever cut piece of something. We are designed to be in harmony. We're designed to be in harmony with ourselves, with nature, with all of life, really, and not to try to say, oh, let's get on all the bases at the same time, because I don't know how the home runs would work.
I love that. I love that.
Mm.
Yeah, definitely. So I know you slightly touched about identities that we're putting on, and you referred to that earlier on. This is the mask I'm putting on. So how can we separate the beliefs from our identities?
Mm.
What can we do there?
Yeah. Well, here's the beautiful thing. Once you realize that it's just a mask, you can really start playing around and along with what masks you're wearing, with what
Mhm.
character you're playing. If
Mhm.
you don't, again, if you can't understand that that's just a play, then like I said before, you're going to really be struggling in life, because you're going to insist that things have to be that way versus getting to
Mhm.
play. It's a very, very different way of living. It's actually, I think, really the only way. So you don't necessarily have to separate a belief from an identity. I think what you have to, what one could do is really to understand that, what is your identity, and allowing it to go much deeper, almost to a place. And this can be very scary, to saying, what if I didn't have an identity? What if I didn't have to be
Mhm.
this thing for this person and this thing? What then? And just open up to a more childlike mind of, oh, if I go play over here, what happens? Because your belief systems are shaping not just what's happening non-physically, but what's happening physically. And so the
Mhm.
more you become that, you become a representation of the belief, a representation or representation of whatever belief you're holding. And so really starting to play around. I suggest play around. Don't get all down on yourself. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to, please, for God's sake, don't try to fight a thought or a belief. Just try to play around
Mhm.
with it. What if it was like this? One of my favorite questions to ask is, or have people ask, is, what does she do? How does she move? Where does she go? And by she, I mean the potential you're stepping into, that you can allow yourself to imagine or to see into. There's so many different potentials of you. So it's like, oh, okay, well, if I can see and imagine this potential, which by the way is simply an evolutionary impulse coursing through you at any given moment, you're feeling called to something, it's an evolutionary impulse. And you'll feel the difference between that and something that feels like, oh, I should do this or I have to do this. It's going to feel
Yeah.
very different vibrationally inside of you. When you start to really kind of tap into that, you can start asking these kinds of questions. How does she stand? How does she walk into a room? How does she talk? Where does she go? And that's the divine in you. It's like, how does the divine in you want to express through this form, the formless through the form, and really starting to allow yourself to play with it. Again, nature, divine intelligence loves play. I always say,
Mhm.
like, when I go to corporate, rooms around the world, the ones that are doing the best work are always the ones that are laughing and having a good time. The ones that are doing crappy work, they're not, because their frequency's off. And I mean
Mhm.
everything from brainwave frequency to the frequencies that they're emitting in through, electromagnetically, to everything. So it's really starting to just get a grip on ourselves and really get a grip on this greater intelligence, right? And just start to trust it a lot more. I talk a lot about that. So yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, Would that be like saying, change without doing anything then? Kind of, where does that come into it?
Yeah, so that's one of the talks I give is how to change without doing anything. Because a lot of times people think I got to do, I got to do, I got to do. And one of the most profound teachings, I mean, it's a constant profound teaching in the Tao Te Ching, but one of them is in the non-doing, it is done. There's nowhere for you to go. There is a potential for you to awaken to. And all of these potentials are coexisting. The doing will happen through you as a result of who you are, as a result of the frequency you hold. It'll happen almost automatically, and sometimes it will feel automatic because of the frequency you hold. It'll feel less automatic the less aligned you are to the truest frequency of who you are. It's that simple. It's really that simple. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we make it so complicated ourselves, don't we? I mean, like it's trying to come from nothing. And I mean, for me personally, like we've had, or many people, we're a part of our family, our upbringing, everybody that's been before us. If we can try and strip back and come from nothing, that's challenging though, really challenging, because then there is nothing. How does one do that?
So nothing or no thing for me. I used to play with this phrase, nothing matters. And people think that's sort of a flippant phrase, and it can be used that way. But for me, it was no thing matters. Nothing is the wellspring from which all matter originates. This thing that we call the void, this thing that we can't understand, this thing that's like, it seems like nothing, but it's really just this infinite, vast void source of physical manifestations. And so when you strip back, it is scary. It is what is alluded to in all of, as far as I can tell from the ones I've studied and looked at, all of the ones I've looked at, of this die to be reborn. Dying to the stories and the characters and the personas that you and society and all of it wants to create. And it is the scariest work. Also, because when you start to do this, it's like you're in a play and you're wearing a certain costume, and all of a sudden you decide to change, or you decide to get naked. I mean, you're going to make everybody really, really uncomfortable for a while. The thing is, once you get really, really naked and you stand in the white fire of that, you can put on any costume you want and play anywhere you want on the stage. But it's really, it's a massive, massive audacity that's required for that. So yeah, it's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I can imagine. But yeah, it's trying to live from, because I was trying to do that, or at least I'm stepping into doing that, should I say? If I can come from nothing, and it's not easy, I can assure you, because all our past just keeps coming into what we're doing in the moment. But yeah,
for
I
me,
find
it's a
that
continual washing away. Like I am very conscious about it, just washing away everything that's in the way of that intelligence. There is an intelligence that's working in you, and you know it, and everyone knows it, really, because even the people who say, well, I don't believe in that, I say, oh, well, so are you the one beating your heart, like right now? Are you the one conducting the trillions of biochemical reactions occurring in your body right now? I mean, are you consciously conducting that? And the person looking back at me will say, well, no. And I say, well, what are you relying on? What are you relying on to do it? And they don't have a good answer for that. And if it's not that intelligence that lives within me. And then, I might say, well, what about the path of the planets? Are you governing that? Did you create a 5-year plan for it? Do you have it all figured out? Do you know where it's going? I mean, you know where it's going because we have enough recorded history to know how things are moving, more or less. But we also have no idea if they're going to keep moving that way. There could be an intergalactic event that we don't know. I mean, I don't know, right? And so there's this intelligence. And so we say, oh, yeah, for that, yeah. But for this infinitesimal part that's left over, this relationship, no, the relationship has to go this way, otherwise the sky's going to fall. For the job, if I don't get this job, if I don't make this much money, why? very rarely will people have a good reason. And if they have a good reason, it's because they've gone really deep into their heart. And if they've gone really deep in their heart, they already have the answer. And they will see the physical manifestation of that if they have that heart-led answer. So it's really a funny phenomenon, and one that we have to start slowly weaning ourselves off of, because this illusion of control and like I need it to all be this way is actually the root of our suffering. I think it was what the Buddha was talking about when he talked about desire, and Anthony DeMello talks about this in his work, is, you know, it's not so much the desire, it's your attachment to that desire. It's you saying, without this thing, I can't be happy. If it doesn't go this way, I can't be at peace. Why? Why are you torturing yourself? It's going to happen. Guess what? Life is going to happen. All its unfolding is going to happen. You don't get to control that. The only thing you got any kind of say over is how you're going to look at it. And again, all our greatest spiritual teachers talked about this. This is all rehashing. It's all stuff you know. Again, it's not me telling you where your car is or anyone else. You just know, oh yeah, the heart is in there. Oh yeah, it has led me right a few times. I do know about that phenomenon. Oh, let me go back. Let me go back. Let me wash away all this crap I put it to block it. And I'm not talking about your physical heart. I'm not talking about an organ. I'm not talking about a chakra. I'm talking about the deep inner intelligence and knowing that lives within you, all around you, that is guiding everything. And that, I believe, is guiding everything to a beautiful evolution, not a resolution, evolution, constant. Yeah.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
Mm.
So you kind of touched a bit about that, like, having things go a certain way, the money and everything. So talk about transform your perception of money and wealth.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
to?
Yeah, most people have a really misguided idea about money. Money
Mm,
is currency. Currency comes from corrente, which is flow. Money, again, is an intelligence. It's the physical representation of a non-physical exchange. When you start to understand some of the basic principles behind wealth, and I talk about all of those, as far as I can tell, the ones I've discovered in the book, in the fourth chapter of the book, of the second book,
mhm,
give yourself permission. When you start to understand those frequencies and you start to embody those frequencies, because it's not, oh, I'm going to read this book on wealth, and I'm going to read that book, and I'm going to go find out what this person says about the 5 steps. No, 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 no. There are some simple truths, but you have got to stay with them. If you flip around like a, dolphin out of water, you're going to be in some trouble. Just stay with them until they become your own. There are principles, like, for example, all of the wealth you could ever envision is inside of you. Now, some people might read that and they think, oh, it's some platitude. And I go into what I mean about that. And you could say that, you could think that. If you do, you missed it. If that's what you think, you missed it. If that's what you think, then you don't know what I'm talking about. And that's okay too. Maybe you need a little longer. Years ago, when I was a kid, I was growing up, I used to listen to Wayne Dyer. I was into personal development, and I was into human potential I think almost since I was born, probably. My career took on I've held so many different careers, but always been fascinated by human potential. And I remember when I was a kid listening to Wayne Dyer, and he said, you could go up to the ocean every day, the ocean of abundance. You could take a spoon, you could take a teaspoon, and you could grab this much out, and you could say, that's all there is for me. This is mine. And you carefully try to get it back to wherever you're going. Or he said you could go up there with a Mack truck every day and take as much as you want, as often as you want, and the abundance of the ocean will never change. It will never change. That's what I'm talking about. But again, if you think, oh, yeah, nice, let me go listen to the next podcast, you missed it. Go back, listen again, listen again, listen again, listen again, until the truth becomes your truth, not someone else's, not something said, not, oh, this person said to go this way, so let me try to find my car over there. No. Yeah. Yours. Your knowing.
I love the fact your book, Give Yourself Permission, Be Confident, Be Free, Be You. You talk about, breaking free from societal constrictions, because that's big. Being Asian myself, that is huge in the Asian culture,
Mm-hmm.
and it probably is in other areas as well. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, tell me about it. I was living in Italy for over half my life, and it's the country of the Pope, and there's all sorts of things. And I remember the scariest decision I ever had to make was getting separated and divorced. I was married for close to 18 years, and I was frightened by that because I was frightened of ostracism.
Mm-hmm.
And I was ostracized by some people, people who had been very important to me. And I had
Mm-hmm.
to have the courage to go through with that because I knew it was right. That's a prime example, and that's one of the reasons why we very rarely will break through societal constraints because it taps on a very primordial fear. I mean, in ancient societies, all they had to say was you're banned from the community. You go out in the wilderness, you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Even modern day now, sometimes that can happen and people die, not because they can't find another way, but because in their heart of hearts, they believe that without the community, they can't survive. But we have it also embedded in us, right? Like we know babies just born, they need connection. If they don't have human connection, they will die. It's creating fostering enough trust in yourself that you can die to that, to be reborn to something else. It
Mm-hmm.
is a very Phoenix-like operation, and it is not, again, as I said, for the faint of heart. But it requires you to stay true to yourself. If you can stay true to yourself, like Shakespeare was saying, to thine own heart be true. Stay true. If you can do that, there really is no limit to where you can go.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm gay, so in the Asian culture, that was a no-no.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the reason why I started my podcast, because I showed, you can be you, whatever that version of you is, without getting all these, you need to break free and be your true self.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Incredibly brave.
Yeah.
And if without that,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of us can't see a pathway. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
suffrage movement. There was a beautiful movie
Mm-hmm.
that came out in Italy. I think it was last year. We loved it. My daughter and I loved it. And it was all about it was about the suffrage movement. It was about women being repressed and abused and all the things. And the women who had the strength, and it makes me even want to cry right now thinking of, Sir Isaac Newton standing on the shoulders of giants, right? If I can see farther than
Mm-hmm.
other men, women, humans, it's because I'm standing on the shoulders of these giants. So thank you for being a giant, and thank you for having me on today. Really appreciate that.
It's been a pleasure.
Mm.
Yeah. So, with that said, what would you recommend to anyone that is listening that wants to really embrace and start being themselves, whatever that is for them, to be free?
I'd go back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is relax. It's okay.
Mhm.
I mean, there's
Mhm.
nothing you have to do. Just relax. Allow the intelligence to get louder or clearer and clearer, I should say. Not really about loud. It just gets clearer and clearer in you. The intelligence that we talked about, getting clearer and clearer to a point where, I can finally really rest. I can really rest. When that starts to set in, you'll see some what other people think are miracles, but are really just the way of life.
Yeah, love that. If this is possible, big question, what is one of the most important lessons you've learned over your life so far?
To trust in God with all
Mhm.
my heart, and to let that intelligence lead me, to let it govern everything, because it does anyway.
Yeah. So, where can the listeners find you online, your books? What's your website, Courtney?
So my name's Cortney without a U. So there's a short URL that's CORTINC. So Court Inc., like Court Incorporated.
Mhm.
.com, or you can find me at my full name, Cortney McDermott, again without a U, on either the web. So my website is also, the full URL is Cortney McDermott. You can get a free mini meditation there too that sort of helps instantly reset your nervous system. That's a fun one. And again, helps you relax. So it's just 7 minutes laying down, and you can really go into different frequencies like we were talking about. At Cortney McDermott is my handle for Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah, we're pretty active. My team also posts some content every week. So you get different podcasts or announcements about books or the audiobooks that are coming out right now. And yeah, you can find me in all those places. And I love to know people's stories too, interacting with the book. We've had hundreds of people write in about really phenomenal experiences with these books. So it's always a great treasure when we get those.
Brilliant. And thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others make a difference. Courtney McDermott.
Thank you, Anita. And thank you to everyone who listened. Lots of gratitude to you and all the people who listened.
My pleasure. And we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. So what is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage. Trust.